Silas Chin built everything with precision: his family, his career, his name. In Vancouver's elite architectural world, he was known for structures that could withstand time, pressure, and storms. But the one thing he never accounted for? Betrayal, from the two people he trusted most. His wife. His best friend. What started as whispers turned into confirmation, then into collapse. But Silas didn't yell. He didn't explode. He calculated. He documented. He dismantled, not in rage, but in silence. This wasn't vengeance. It was justice, blueprint by blueprint. As his marriage unraveled and his children stood between two fractured worlds, Silas made a choice, not to forgive, but to rebuild. Not to forget, but to shape what came next, with the same meticulous care he gave his buildings. This is a story about loyalty. About consequence. About the difference between holding on and moving forward. It's not a redemption arc. It's a reckoning. Before we dive into the heart of this story, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being here, for choosing to listen, to feel, to reflect. This isn't just another story about betrayal. It's about what happens after. After the trust is broken. After the silence. After you're left staring at the pieces of the life you built and realizing, no one's coming to fix it but you. You're here because some part of this speaks to you, maybe it echoes something you've lived, or something you're still carrying. Whatever brought you here, I hope you find something in these words that makes you feel a little more understood, a little more seen. And now, I invite you to come with me, to walk through the fire, the fallout, and the reconstruction. Not every story is about healing. Some are about holding steady. About choosing what stays and what goes when the foundation shifts beneath your feet. So take a breath. Settle in. This is where it begins. Let's start digging into the story. Silas Chin stared up at the shimmering structure he'd designed, the Solis Tower, a 32-story marvel of glass and steel piercing Vancouver's cloud-flecked skyline. At 39, Silas had spent nearly 2 decades redefining urban architecture, earning a reputation as a brilliant but fiercely exacting visionary. "You've outdone yourself," murmured his associate, Dana, offering a glass of dry Prosecco. "They're calling it the city's new icon." Silas barely acknowledged the compliment. His dark eyes scanned the gala attendees, bankers, investors, fellow architects, but he wasn't here for their approval. Not anymore. His gaze landed on Trevor Langdon across the room, the same investor who had once questioned his unorthodox cantilevered design. "Remember Langdon?" Silas asked under his breath. "Said I'd regret pushing that top-floor overhang?" Dana nodded. His firm just had a project halted, crane collapse, for injured. Karma's got timing. Silas sipped his drink, expression unreadable. "I never forget who doubts me." A buzz in his pocket pulled him back to reality. Lena. After 12 years of marriage, her name still softened the edges of his hardwired precision. He stepped onto the balcony to answer. "Wrapping up now." Her voice was quiet. "Eli's wondering if you'll make his piano recital." "You said maybe." Silas checked his watch. "An hour until showtime. Tell him I'll be there. I don't miss what matters." Unlike his own father, who vanished when Silas was 11, he made vows and kept them. His life was built on that foundation: loyalty, resilience, and never letting go of what's his. Driving through the dusky city streets, Silas's thoughts turned inward. Lena had always been the opposite of his calculated rhythm: warm, impulsive, a chaos he learned to welcome. Their children, Eli, 11, and Mara, 14, knew a version of family he'd only dreamed of growing up. He pulled into the driveway, heart steadied by the thought of his son on stage, and Lena's soft smile waiting for him. Everything in his life was engineered with precision. Everything except them. And just as he reached the door, his phone rang again. He answered, not yet knowing that tonight, of all nights, would test the very principles he thought made him unbreakable. Not Lena this time, but Theo Mendez, Silas's closest friend for nearly 2 decades. They'd first crossed paths in 2010. Silas was a young architect pitching designs nobody believed in, and Theo was the gutsy developer who saw potential when no one else did. Since then, they'd built a legacy side by side. "We still on for squash tomorrow?" Theo asked over the line. 6 a.m. sharp, Silas said. "And if you're late again, I'm counting every point." When Silas arrived home, the mid-century hillside house overlooking Kitsilano was unusually quiet. He loosened his collar, glancing at the tie on the dresser, navy with silver accents. Lena had laid it out earlier, one of those thoughtful touches that once defined their connection. As he adjusted it in the mirror, something slipped from the inner pocket of his blazer, a folded receipt. He caught it before it hit the floor. Le Chain, the boutique hotel in downtown Vancouver. He hadn't been there since last fall, a brief meeting with a French design consultant. He frowned, a whisper of unease stirring. More cracks had been surfacing lately, Lena's back-to-back wellness retreats, her phone locked with a new password, and midnight text alerts she'd dismiss as Melanie checking in. Her sister rarely texted him directly. Something didn't add up. But he shook it off and made his way to the recital hall. The warm tones of the Steinway greeted him as he found a seat near the aisle. Eli spotted him from a few rows down and gave a thumbs up, flanked by a few of his music school buddies. Silas smiled faintly. Eli, like his father, chased excellence with silent intensity. The performance began. Mara, graceful and poised, played Chopin with a kind of emotion Silas never managed to express aloud. Halfway through her piece, his phone buzzed, a message from Levi, his construction manager. "Urgent. Structural shift reported at Riverstone site. Need you here." Damn. He stepped out quietly, caught Mara's eye just long enough to give her a proud nod. "I'll make it up to you," he mouthed. After the recital, he kissed her on the head and promised Lena he'd be back later. She didn't ask questions, another detail that didn't sit right. 3 nights later, Silas was in his office reviewing blueprints when Lena walked in, dressed sharp and casual. "Book club night," she said, eyes skimming past him. "Third this week?" Silas asked evenly. "Special series. Melanie's idea." He waited until her car turned the corner, then opened his laptop. The tracking app showed her heading downtown, not to Melanie's place. His jaw clenched. 20 minutes later, his phone rang. A Vancouver number. "Mr. Chen," a voice said gently. "This is St. Jude's Hospital. Your wife's been in an accident." The world narrowed into a tight tunnel. "How bad?" Silas asked, eyes locked on the road. "She's stable," the nurse said over the phone. "But she's been asking for you." Silas drove with unflinching focus, his mind clicking into overdrive, mapping possibilities, drafting emotional damage reports, as if blueprints could solve this. Logic was his safe space in chaos. At St. Jude's, he moved through the corridors with purpose until a nurse halted him at the desk. "Only family allowed," she said, her tone apologetic but firm. "I'm her husband," Silas replied, clipped and calm, his heart anything but. She scanned the chart, brows knitting. "That's odd. There's already a man signed in." "As her husband." Silas blinked. Something inside him tilted. For the first time in years, he felt the walls of his meticulously ordered world fracture. He barely heard her next words. He walked past her, a silent force cutting through sterile air. In the room, he stopped cold. Theo Mendez, his best friend, sat beside Lena's bed, her fingers resting comfortably in his. That casual intimacy that only came from years of hidden touch. Lena's breath caught the moment her gaze met Silas's. "We were going to tell you," Theo said, his voice low but steady, fingers unmoving. "We just never found the right time." Silas didn't move. Didn't speak. He absorbed the scene like a blueprint scorched into memory. His wife. His closest friend. The hotel receipt, Theo's. The so-called wellness weekends. The late-night whispers passed off as Melanie. He turned and walked out. In the parking lot, he sat in silence, hands gripping the wheel. His breath came slow, steady. Anger hadn't hit yet, only the sterile, surgical sting of betrayal. Over the next 3 weeks, he operated like a man underwater. He moved into the apartment above his design studio, served Lena divorce papers through his lawyer, and buried himself in the Riverstone site plans. He answered Mara and Eli's messages with kind, clipped replies. Lena's 27 calls went unanswered. On the 28th, he picked up. "What could you possibly have to say?" he asked, voice devoid of fury, only bone-deep exhaustion. "Silas, please. Let me explain. It's not. I saw what it is." He cut her off. "How long?" The pause was long. Then, 2 years, she whispered. The music recitals. His mother's funeral. Their anniversary trip to Tofino. All lies. "Theo doesn't mean anything," Lena pleaded. "It was a mistake." "No," Silas said, voice like a closing door. "It was a choice." "A mistake is something you regret and never repeat," Silas said, his voice cold and deliberate. "You made hundreds of choices, text by text, night by night. That's not a mistake. That's who you are." "Silas, please. What about the kids?" Lena's voice cracked. "Mara is almost 18. Eli understands more than you think. And I'll make sure they know the truth," he replied flatly. "I'll see you at the hearing." He ended the call. There was no rage. No heartbreak. Just the familiar frost of clarity. The same stillness he'd felt at 12, standing by the window, waiting for a father who never came home. The same steel resolve that kept him going when 2 investors pulled out of his first solo build days before groundbreaking. Betrayal didn't break Silas Chen. It refined him. The North Vancouver home he designed now felt like a museum of false memories. Sunlight hit the hardwood floor through cathedral windows, and it only made the emptiness sharper. He'd arranged to collect a few personal items while Lena was out. But he wasn't alone. Footsteps echoed on the stairs. Eli, home from music camp for the weekend, stood halfway down, tension clear in his posture. "Dad," he said. His voice was tight, like he wasn't sure what he wanted to say. "You finally came back." "I'm here for a few things," Silas said, gently setting down a box. "That's it?" Eli moved down a step. "You're just walking out?" "Mom's wrecked." Silas met his son's eyes. "Is that what she told you?" "She said you found out about her and Theo." "And yeah, it's awful. But families fix things. They don't just quit." Silas stepped forward. "Did she tell you it's been going on for 2 years? That you've been living in a lie for that long?" Eli's expression cracked. 2 years? His voice dipped. "That's during my recital. During everything." The doorbell rang. Silas opened it to find Mara, tears streaming down her face, her ballet bag slipping off her shoulder. She stormed in. "I hate her," she said. "I hate them both." Silas followed her inside. "What happened?" "I went to Theo's office," Mara said, voice shaking. "He promised to help with my portfolio." She swallowed hard. "I waited." Then she walked out with him. They were holding hands. Laughing. Kissing. Like it was normal. Like we don't exist. Silas put a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "We do exist," he said. "And they don't get to define us." Eli dropped onto the stairs, burying his face in his hands, breath shaky. Silas stood still for a moment, then placed a grounding hand on Mara's shoulder. "I need you both to hear this clearly," he said, his voice low and firm. "What comes next, it's not about patching things up. It's not about forgiveness. I don't do forgiveness where betrayal is involved." Eli looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "So that's it? You're just done with Mom?" "She made her choice," Silas said, his jaw tightening. "And so did Theo. Now I'm making mine." Later that night, Silas sat in his minimalist office above his studio, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the downtown Vancouver skyline. Jordan Kwong, his private security lead and one of the few people Silas had ever truly trusted, walked in with a black folder under his arm. "You were right," Jordan said, placing the file on the desk. "Financials, phone records, keycard logs. Even surveillance. It's all here." Silas flipped through it, transfers to offshore accounts, hidden properties, late-night hotel check-ins. And the assets? 3 under different shell core. 1 near Whistler. 1 in the Caymans. 1 on Bowen Island. Silas closed the file slowly. He always liked to say I taught him how to think ahead. Jordan raised an eyebrow. "Guess he forgot you also taught him about digital footprints." "He got careless," Silas murmured. "Probably because he thought I'd never look." Jordan folded his arms. "What's the move? Legal firestorm? Public exposure?" Silas rose and walked to the window, gazing at a nearby tower, Aurelius Group, Theo's company headquarters. From here, he could see the glass-walled executive lounge where they used to toast new deals together. "People like Theo and Lena," Silas said, voice flat, "they treat betrayal like a bad decision you survive. Something temporary." He turned, expression unreadable but intense. "I'm going to show them it's permanent. It's the narrative. The whole damn arc." Jordan nodded slowly. He'd seen that look before, never reactionary, always precise. "How deep do you want to go?" "All the way," Silas replied. "Phase 1 is intelligence. I want every name. Every connection. Every timeline. Then we create pressure points." "For what?" Jordan asked. Silas allowed the faintest trace of a smile. "For teaching them the meaning of consequence." By midnight, he had the bones of his plan. It wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be rushed. It would be structural dismantling, cold, calculated, and absolute. 5 weeks after Lena's accident, Silas sat in a quiet, glass-paneled office overlooking Cole Harbor. Across from him, Nora Lynn, his lawyer of over a decade, slid a packet of divorce papers toward him with precise fingers. "They're proposing an even split," she said. 50-50 on assets acquired during the marriage." Silas didn't reach for the papers. "And you told them that's not going to happen?" Nora allowed herself a faint smile. "I reminded them of the prenuptial agreement. Your business holdings, intellectual property, and premarital accounts are protected." "And Theo's company?" "Not directly tied to the divorce," she said, then paused. "But Lena's counsel implied they'd appreciate your discretion regarding the affair." Silas's brow twitched. "They want to buy my silence. They're offering additional compensation in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement." Silas took the documents and flipped through them methodically. "They're nervous." "As they should be," Nora replied, her voice soft but sure. She had seen Silas under pressure many times. This version of him, cool, detached, calculating, meant trouble for the other side. "What's our response?" "Uphold the prenup. Reject the NDA. Full custody of Mara until she turns 18. Nora raised an eyebrow. "Lena won't go quietly." "She's the parent who dismantled the family," Silas said. "And I have evidence of her absence from every major event in Mara's life these past 2 years. Most of it due to Theo." "Evidence?" He handed her a flash drive. "Calendar records. Home security footage. Timestamps showing her leaving early or not showing up at all, for recitals, school meetings, therapy sessions. And Mara's statement. It's on the drive." Nora slipped it into her bag. "This won't be clean." "It never was," Silas replied. He rose and buttoned his coat. "One more thing, I want a forensic audit on every shared account from the last 3 years." "Looking for anything specific?" He paused at the door. "Just confirmation." Meanwhile, across the city, Theo Mendez paced the floor of his penthouse corner office. His financial advisor stood stiffly near the windows. "We lost 3 investors on the West Bay project," the advisor said. "Matsuda Group, Emerald Crest, and Crown Valley. All citing concern over corporate stability." Theo stopped cold. Who told them to be concerned? No one had to. Not anymore. Every client Theo had secured in the past year had been siphoned from Silas's network. Trusted contacts. Legacy referrals. None of it was coincidence. "He started," Theo muttered under his breath, the tension in his jaw pulsing. He turned to his financial advisor. "Move all liquid assets offshore. Cayman and Luxembourg first. Then fast-track the merger talks with Barrett Structures." "Sir, Barrett's offer is undervalued by nearly 30%. "Do it anyway," Theo snapped. "And find me something, anything, I can use against Silas Chen." That evening, Silas visited Mara at her Aunt Melanie's home, where she'd been staying since the fallout. He found her curled up in the guest room, surrounded by scattered textbooks and a glowing laptop screen. "How's physics?" he asked, leaning into the doorway. Mara looked up, eyes tired but softening when she saw him. "I hate it. But I'm holding the 4.0. That's my girl." He sat beside her, gently nudging a textbook out of the way. "I filed for full custody today." She nodded. "Good. I already told Mom I'm staying with you." "It may get ugly," Silas warned. "Family court tends to twist things." "She's already trying," Mara muttered. "Said you were cold. Distant. Obsessed with work." Silas studied her. The grief on her face had calcified into quiet steel. "Don't let what they did shape who you become." "Why not?" she shot back. "It's changed you. I've never seen you like this." Silas met her gaze evenly. "I'm not changing. I'm just showing you who I've always been." Later that night, Silas met Jordan at a quiet dive bar tucked in East Vancouver, well off their usual grid. No suits, no cameras, no boardroom whispers. "We've got something," Jordan said, sliding a thick folder across the table. "Theo's company is bleeding. He's been routing funds through a series of shell companies and back into his personal accounts." Silas flipped through the papers, bank logs, account IDs, digital breadcrumbs. "Money laundering?" "Strong indicators," Jordan confirmed. "And it gets worse. Hernandez. That fatal accident on the Ridgeview project in Calgary wasn't so accidental." Silas looked up sharply. "He knew?" "Emails show Theo was warned about the scaffold safety issue. Chose to ignore it." Silas exhaled through his nose, a slow release of something dark. "And Lena?" Jordan nodded. "Started moving funds 18 months ago. Small transfers. Different bank. Different city." Silas closed the folder. "They were building their new life, before they even told you yours was over." Jordan hesitated at the edge of the booth, his usual confidence replaced by concern. "There's one more thing. It's about Eli." Silas's eyes narrowed. "What about him?" "He met with Theo yesterday. Private room. High floor at the Pinnacle Grill. They were there over an hour." For a moment, something shifted behind Silas's otherwise steady expression. "Get me the footage." The next morning, Silas stood inside an elegant watch boutique tucked into a high-rise shopping gallery in downtown Vancouver. Glass counters gleamed under soft lighting, showcasing precision-engineered masterpieces. A woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair approached with a warm smile. "Mr. Chen. It's always an honor. Looking for something special?" Silas gestured toward a minimalist yet luxurious Patek Philippe. "That one. It's for my son." As she retrieved it from the display, she paused. "Funny thing, I believe I saw Eli in here last week, with Mr. Mendez. They were admiring this exact piece." Silas didn't flinch. "Is that so?" "Yes," she continued. "Mr. Mendez bought it. Said it was a graduation gift." Silas turned the timepiece in his hands, sleek, perfect, $15,000 worth of optics and leverage. "I'll take the same one," he said. "Engrave the back, always know the time." When she returned with the box, Silas accepted it with quiet thanks. Then, as if commenting on the weather, he asked, "Gloria, how long have we known each other?" "Over 20 years, she replied. "Since you designed my first flagship store." "In all that time," Silas said, "have I ever given you cause to doubt me?" She blinked. "Never." "Then let me be clear. Theo Mendez isn't who you believe he is. I'd reconsider any leases, investments, or partnerships tied to his firm." Gloria's smile faded. "I just signed a letter of intent for a retail wing managed by his holding company." "Maybe diversify," Silas said calmly, placing his business card on the counter. "Before it's too late." Across the city, Lena sat stiffly in her lawyer's office, her hands clenched around a printout. Her voice cracked. "He wants full custody." Diane Cho, seasoned and blunt, didn't sugarcoat. "He has solid evidence. Multiple documented absences tied directly to your trips with Theo. It weakens your position." "That doesn't make me a bad mother," Lena whispered. "No," Diane replied. "But it builds his case." She paused. "And there's more. He submitted your account transfers, 18 months worth. Different banks. Same pattern." Lena's hands dropped into her lap. For the first time, she looked afraid. "The court may interpret this as financial distancing," Diane said carefully. Lena's hands trembled. "It was just savings. Emergency backup. For $342,000? Diane's tone was professional, but edged with disbelief. "Mrs. Chen," she continued, "your husband isn't reacting emotionally. He's building a case, carefully, strategically. He's dismantling your footing one piece at a time." That evening, Silas received a text from Eli, "Can we talk?" "Your place?" When his son arrived, Silas opened the door and immediately noticed the sleek Patek Philippe on Eli's wrist. It matched the one he'd bought just days earlier. "Nice watch," Silas said, moving toward the bar. He poured them each a drink, offering his son a glass. Eli glanced down. "Theo gave it to me." "I know," Silas replied, handing him the glass. "Gloria told me." Eli took a long sip, then set the tumbler on the table with a muted clink. "We met a few days ago. He offered me a role at his firm." Silas sat opposite him, silent. "He said, with the right mentorship, I'd be running my own division within 5 years, Eli said, tension tight in his throat. "He also said you were unraveling. That you were obsessed with destroying him." Silas studied his son's face, the flickers of doubt, the craving for independence, the quiet pull toward affirmation. "And what do you think?" he asked evenly. Eli hesitated. "I think Theo betrayed you. But he's also believed in me, even when I didn't. You always pushed me so hard." Silas nodded once. "So you're considering his offer?" Eli didn't speak, but the answer hung heavy between them. Silas stood, walked to his side cabinet, and returned with a small box. He placed it gently on the table. "I bought you the same watch," he said. "Had it engraved." Eli opened the box. Inside was the same model. On the back, "Integrity is the only true legacy." "Dad." Silas's voice was low. "Theo isn't offering you a future. He's purchasing your loyalty. Because he knows where I'm vulnerable, through you and your sister." Eli looked up. "What are you going to do to him?" Silas leaned forward. "The question isn't what I'll do. It's what he's already done." He paused. "Ask him about Alberto Hernandez." "Who's that?" "The contractor who died in Calgary last year. Ask Theo if shaving 2 weeks off the timeline was worth a man's life." Eli paled slightly. "Choose your allegiance carefully, Eli," Silas said. "Because I don't forget betrayal. Not from anyone." Even if they share my name, Silas muttered. The next afternoon, he made the hour-long drive north to a secluded ranch estate in Langley, where he met with Olivia Tran, Theo Mendez's ex-wife. Once a celebrated dressage competitor, Olivia had retreated from public life after their brutal divorce 6 years ago. "I'm surprised you called," she said, pouring iced tea as they sat on the wraparound porch. The sun cut long shadows across the paddock. "Lena and I were never exactly lunch friends." "I'm not here about Lena," Silas replied. "I need intel on Theo's foreign holdings. Especially the ones he hid from you during your settlement." Olivia's brow lifted, but she didn't look shocked. "How do you know about those?" "The same way I know he leaned on Justice Farrell to push through your final judgment. The same way I know about the money funneling, the safety violations, and the bribes to city officials for fast-tracked permits." Olivia exhaled slowly, setting down her glass. "What are you really after, Silas?" "Justice," he said evenly. "With your help or without it." She studied him in silence, then stood. From a tall cabinet beside the fireplace, she slid out a hidden panel and pulled free a slim flash drive. "My attorney found these accounts 2 months too late to include in the divorce. Theo doesn't know I kept the data. I was saving it." "For what?" Olivia's smile was faint and ice-cold. "For when it would actually matter. And I think that moment just arrived." On his drive back to Vancouver, Silas answered a call from Jordan. "Theo's trying to force through a merger with Barrett Structures. He needs cash fast." "Block it," Silas said. "Send the Ridgeview safety report to Barrett's legal counsel. Anonymously." "Already done." "Also, Lena's asked to meet. Says it's about the kids." Silas tapped the brakes, thinking. "Arrange it. Public setting. Neutral ground. Tomorrow?" "It's not smart," Silas admitted. "But it's necessary. The kids? They need to see who we really are." "Mara won't speak to me," Lena said quietly. "And Eli's stuck in the middle. This is hurting them." Silas didn't flinch. Their mother's affair with their father's business partner isn't exactly therapeutic either. Yet here we are. Lena winced. "I know I deserve that. But Silas, can we please handle this with some dignity? For their sake?" He studied her across the table, noting the precise tilt of her head, the softened voice, the performance of vulnerability she once wielded with ease. He let the silence stretch before speaking. 15 years ago, Silas said, when Gregory Bain tried to hijack my Cole Harbor project, do you remember what you told me?" Confusion flickered across her face. "Silas, what does that have to?" "You said, don't just win. Make sure he never tries to touch what's yours again. That was one of the things I loved about you." His voice stayed level, conversational. "Your understanding that consequences, real ones, must be permanent to mean anything. This isn't business," she whispered. "This is our family." "No," Silas replied, "this is betrayal. And you and I both know there's no difference." Lena's composure slipped for the first time. "What do you want, Silas? To punish me? Fine. Take the house. Take the money. But don't turn our kids into pawns." "I'm not using them," he said. "I'm showing them the truth. The version you tried to erase." He leaned forward slightly. "You didn't just lie to me. You lied to them. Every time you skipped Mara's therapy to meet Theo. Every time you told Eli you were traveling for work when you were really visiting real estate agents with him." "I made mistakes," she whispered. "Terrible ones. But I love them." Silas tilted his head. "But you still risked their foundation, their trust, for what? A rush? A second life?" His tone was calm. Detached. Which made it cut deeper. "You weren't thinking of them when you opened those offshore accounts." Lena paled. "How did you?" "I know everything," Silas interrupted. "The Bowen Island property under Theo's sister's name. The Cayman transfers. The Manhattan apartment under Northbridge Capital Holdings. Silas. You're asking for joint custody, he continued. But in 6 months, you've spent 12 weekends away from your daughter. And not one of them was for work. With Theo, Silas said calmly. I have receipts. Flight logs. Hotel records. All of it. Lena's eyes welled with tears. What are you going to do? Silas stood, folding his napkin neatly beside his untouched glass of mineral water. I'm going to show our children that loyalty means something. That actions shape outcomes. And some betrayals, he added, voice like steel, can't be undone. He turned and walked away. You can't be this cold, Lena called after him. You're not the man I married. Silas paused at the terrace entrance. He turned his head just slightly. You never really knew the man you married, he said flatly. That was your first mistake. Across the city, Theo Mendez sat alone in his executive suite, the walls of glass around him reflecting the weight settling on his shoulders. His eyes scanned the email that had just obliterated his merger plans with Barrett Structures. Attached were documents detailing safety violations on the Ridgeview site in Calgary, internal emails, time-stamped warnings from engineers, even the original OSHA report filed after Alberto Hernandez's fatal fall. And a new one, a formal request from authorities to reopen the case. His phone buzzed. It was his attorney. Barrett's out, the lawyer said without preamble. They've pulled the offer completely. Theo swallowed. Why? The documents you're looking at? Someone's filed a complaint with provincial regulators. And OSHA's involved now. We've also been served a subpoena for all Ridgeview project documentation. Theo's voice dropped to a whisper. Silas. Whoever it is, the lawyer said grimly, they know exactly where to cut. And Theo, it's not just Barrett. 3 of your top international clients have frozen contracts. They're distancing themselves until the investigation clears. Theo ended the call, hand trembling as he poured himself a scotch. Just then, his personal phone vibrated. A message from Lena, he knows everything. The accounts. The offshore properties. All of it. As the panic tightened around him, the office door creaked open. Elichin stood there, his face unreadable. Eli, Theo managed, standing halfway. I didn't know you were stopping by. Who was Alberto Hernandez? Eli asked. Theo blinked. Who? The contractor who died on the Ridgeview site. The one who warned you about faulty rigging. Theo hesitated. That was an accident. I checked the court records, Eli said quietly. You ignored the warnings. For what? A faster build? Theo couldn't answer. Eli's eyes didn't blink. You taught me to read contracts, he said. Now I know how to read people. Eli's voice was calm, clear, so much like his father's that it made Theo's blood run cold. I also looked into the offshore accounts, Eli said, standing tall. The funneling, the shell companies, the bribes. Theo slowly set his glass down. Eli, whatever Silas told you. He didn't tell me anything specific, Eli interrupted. He just told me to ask the right questions. I found the answers on my own. Including your plans with my mother. Theo sank back into his leather chair, the weight of it all finally pressing down. You don't understand, he said. Your father, he's a good man, but he's ruthless. Strategic. Cold. We knew he'd come for us. So yes, we prepared fallback options, emergency funds, properties under aliases. All while eating dinner at our house, Eli said. Every Sunday. Theo's eyes dropped. It's not black and white. It is, Eli said firmly, removing the Patek Philippe from his wrist. He placed it on Theo's desk. You betrayed him. You betrayed us. You helped dismantle our family. He turned to leave. Eli, wait, Theo called after him. Please. I can explain. Your father, he's not who you think. Eli paused at the door, back straight. That's where you're wrong, he said quietly. He's exactly who I thought he was. The ones who weren't who I thought. You and my mother. That night, Silas sat in his downtown apartment, the city a constellation of lights beyond the glass. Jordan stood by the table, laptop open, files scattered like a war map. Barrett officially pulled out, Jordan said. And the Crown Prosecutor's office has opened a preliminary inquiry into Hernandez's death. Silas nodded once. And Olivia's data? Verified. The foreign accounts exist, and the balances are significant. Enough to raise flags for tax evasion and corporate fraud. And Lena's transfers? Connected. She's been funneling part of her inheritance into the same offshore network. Smaller amounts, but patterned. Silas stood at the window, jaw tight, gaze distant. Eli came by after meeting Theo. Returned the watch he gave him. Jordan raised a brow. He chose? He chose truth, Silas said. Which is all I've ever expected of either of them. His phone buzzed. A text from Mara. Mom keeps calling. Silas typed back one word. Boundaries. Mara's message flashed on his screen again. She keeps calling. Begging to talk. What should I do? Silas replied with the same steadiness he'd offered all along. Whatever you believe is right. Just remember who was there. Every recital. Every fever. Every bad dream. Even when I was buried in work, he thought, I showed up. She chose not to. As he set the phone down, Silas knew this wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about revealing truth. Who Lena and Theo really were. To their friends. To their children. And most importantly, to themselves. And so far, the demolition was going according to plan. 6 months after Lena's car accident, Silas stood in the provincial courthouse in downtown Vancouver as the judge read the custody ruling. Mara, now 17, sat quietly beside him, her posture still, her expression unreadable, so much like his own when he was her age. The court grants primary physical custody to Mr. Silas Chen, the judge said, with supervised visitation rights granted to Mrs. Lena Chen. This arrangement remains until the child reaches the age of majority, after which visitation becomes discretionary. Across the aisle, Lena dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Theo was conspicuously absent. Their once unified front had collapsed under scrutiny. Outside, the media frenzy was in full swing. The leaked reports, safety violations, offshore laundering, and unethical deals had made headlines across Canadian news outlets. The fall of Theo Mendez was as public as it was dramatic. Silas shielded Mara as they walked to the car, ignoring shouted questions. Inside, she looked over at him. You didn't leak the files, did you? He started the engine. Would it matter if I did? No, Mara said after a beat. They're true, right? Silas looked over at her. Truth is the only thing I've never bent. Not with you. Not with Eli. Not with anyone. That afternoon, his assistant knocked once before showing in Melanie Tran, Lena's sister. She approached his desk, visibly uncomfortable. I didn't think you'd agree to meet, she said. We've known each other 20 years, Silas replied. You're still part of Mara and Eli's family. She sat down. That's why I'm here. Lena's unraveling. The custody loss, the financial mess, Theo distancing himself, she's talking about leaving Canada. Disappearing. Silas said nothing. Don't you care? What about Mara? Eli? He met her gaze. What Lena never understood, what Theo never grasped, is that when you destroy a foundation, you don't just rebuild and expect it to hold. This isn't about developments or investments, Melanie said, her voice rising. It's about people. Family. Exactly, Silas replied calmly. And family starts with loyalty. Lena broke that. Now she's living with the consequences. Melanie stood, frustration flashing in her posture. You know, Lena always said there was something tender behind all your control, something warm. She was wrong, Silas said without emotion. There's nothing left but ice. Did Lena send you here? He asked suddenly. Melanie hesitated. No. She doesn't know I'm here. Then why are you really here? She sighed. Because she's still my sister, despite everything. And because. She hesitated again. Eli came to see me yesterday. He's worried about you. Silas raised an eyebrow. Worried in what way? He thinks your pursuit of justice has become consuming. That you're not just holding Theo and Lena accountable anymore. You're destroying them. Silas was silent for a moment. Then, justice without consequence is performance. And revenge without limits, he added, looking directly at her. That's just survival. You've already won, Melanie said. You exposed them. You have Mara. You kept the company intact. Isn't that enough? Silas stood. The signal that their conversation was done. When they decided to betray me, they didn't set boundaries on the damage they were willing to cause. So why should I? As Melanie left, Silas's phone buzzed. It was Jordan. Theo just called an emergency board meeting, Jordan reported. He's trying to liquidate what's left before regulators freeze his holdings. In the Crown's office? Silas asked. They're filing formal charges next week. Securities fraud, tax evasion, and criminal negligence tied to the Hernandez case. Silas checked his watch. Time to deliver the final message. Meet me at the Meridian Club. 8 sharp. That evening, the Meridian, Vancouver's most exclusive private club, hummed with quiet deals and softer threats. Silas entered at precisely 8 p.m., nodding to acquaintances as he made his way to the reserved private dining room. Theo Mendez was already there, a glass of scotch clutched in one shaking hand. You asked for this meeting, Theo said. His voice, once polished, now rang hollow. Why? Silas sat opposite him. To offer you a choice. Theo laughed bitterly. A choice? You've already burned everything down. My company's stock has cratered. Investors are bailing. The Crown's office is filing charges next week. Theo Mendez leaned forward, his voice ragged. What possible choice do I have left? Confession or collapse, Silas replied calmly. Full disclosure of your illegal operations. Return the siphon funds. Voluntary surrender to the authorities, or watch your empire crumble, piece by piece. You can't be serious, Theo whispered. Silas didn't blink. Alberto Hernandez had 3 children. Their father died because you ignored warnings about scaffold integrity to protect your timeline. His widow's about to lose her home. Theo's face went pale. How do you know that? I know everything about the people you've harmed, Silas said. Just like I know about the bribes to Commissioner Langford. The offshore accounts in Grand Cayman. The laundering through your sister's gallery in Gastown. Silas leaned in, his voice like glass. And I have documentation for all of it. If you had enough to convict, I'd already be in custody, Theo snapped. Some evidence requires the right context, Silas said. And I'm prepared to supply it. Unless, of course, you decide to tell the truth first. Theo drained his scotch in one long swallow. And Lena? What happens to her in this scenario? She chose her path when she chose you. You really are a cold bastard, Theo muttered. 20 years of friendship, meaningless to you. Silas's eyes narrowed. When did it stop meaning something to you? The night you first slept with my wife? Or was it earlier, when you started grooming my son for leverage? Theo looked away. He had no defense. You have until tomorrow, Silas said, rising. Confession or collapse. Both files are ready. Only one gets used. At the door, Theo called after him. What about redemption? Forgiveness? Silas paused. Some betrayals don't leave room for redemption. You taught me that. Chapter 18, Permanent Fractures. The next morning, Silas was brewing coffee when Eli entered using the key he still hadn't returned. "We need to talk," Eli said, setting his bag on the counter. Silas handed him a mug. "Go on." "I spoke to Theo last night. He was drunk, rambling about court, prison, ending everything." Silas nodded. "I told him the truth. That actions have consequences. And he's out of time." Eli stared at him, unreadable. "What are you going to do if he doesn't confess?" he asked quietly. Silas met his son's gaze. "Then I do what's necessary." "This isn't justice anymore, Dad," Eli said quietly. "This is systematic destruction." Silas didn't respond at first. He poured coffee with methodical precision. "That's what you see." "I see a man who won't stop until there's nothing left of the people who betrayed him," Eli continued. "Even if it means burning pieces of himself along the way." Silas leaned against the counter, silent for a beat. "When you were 10, you built that model suspension bridge for the school expo." Eli blinked at the shift. "It collapsed during the presentation. Because Noah Malik loosened one of the support lines," Silas said. "You were humiliated. In front of everyone. What's your point?" "I told you then what I'm telling you now. When someone deliberately undermines what you've built, you don't just fix it. You rebuild it stronger, and make sure they can never touch it again. Mom and Theo hurt you." "I get that," Eli said. "They betrayed you. But they've already lost everything: status, business, trust. Mom lost custody. Theo's about to be indicted." Silas's face didn't move. "It ends when justice is complete." "And who decides what complete means?" "You?" Eli stood, his voice quiet but firm. "Theo said you gave him a choice. What if he doesn't confess?" "Then I act," Silas said. "And do what needs to be done." Eli's eyes narrowed. "The man I grew up admiring knew the line between justice and vengeance." "The man you grew up with believed in loyalty," Silas said. "A lesson your mother and Theo erased." "And what about loyalty to the man you were?" Eli asked. "The one who taught us integrity. Who taught us to rise above." Before Silas could respond, his phone buzzed. It was Jordan. "He's called a press conference," Jordan reported. "At Mendez Capital. 1 hour." After Eli left, Silas drove through light rain to the gleaming glass tower that once symbolized everything Theo stood for. A crowd had already gathered in the lobby. Silas remained at the back, unnoticed, his coat damp from the weather, as Theo Mendez stepped up to the podium, tired, pale, but composed. "Thank you for coming," Theo said. "I've called this press conference to address the allegations surrounding Mendez Capital, financial misconduct, permitting violations, and the Ridgeview tragedy." Silas listened, expression unreadable, as Theo began his final act. "The allegations are true," Theo Mendez said, his voice steady but low enough that reporters leaned in. "I personally ordered the concealment of safety violations at the Ridgeview project in Calgary, which led to the death of Alberto Hernandez." Gasps and murmurs rippled across the press gallery. "I also authorized the use of offshore shell companies to mask financial misconduct and engaged in deliberate tax evasion." The room stirred again. Cameras clicked. Pens scratched. "I take full responsibility for these actions," Theo continued. "I've submitted full documentation to the Crown Prosecutor's office and will surrender myself to authorities this afternoon." Hands flew up. Questions surged. "One more thing," Theo added, raising a hand. "These decisions were mine alone. My personal relationship with Lena Chen, while inappropriate, was separate from my business practices. She had no knowledge of these actions." In the back of the crowd, Silas Chen stood motionless, his expression unreadable. That final statement caught him off guard. That evening, Silas sat in his office when his lawyer, Nora Lynn, called. "Theo's confession changes the legal optics," she said. "His statement fully clears Lena of any knowledge of his financial crimes." "Because she didn't know about those crimes," Silas said. Still, it weakens our custody leverage. If she petitions, the court may reassess. She won't petition. Nora paused. How can you be sure? Because I know things Theo doesn't. Things Lena won't risk making public. After ending the call, Silas drove to a modest home in Richmond, a quiet suburb outside the city. A woman in her early 40s opened the door, eyes widening with recognition. Mr. Chen? I'm Elena Hernandez. Thank you for seeing me, Silas said as she welcomed him inside. The home was humble but well cared for. Family photos lined the walls, Alberto smiling beside 3 children. The youngest couldn't have been more than 10. I saw the press conference, Elena said, pouring tea. Theo Mendez finally told the truth. Silas accepted the cup with a nod. Yes. And there will be a settlement. A trust for your children's education. The mortgage, wiped clean. Elena's eyes welled. From Mendez Capital? From me. But, why? You didn't do this. No, Silas said. But I helped uncover it. Justice isn't just about punishment. He looked toward the framed photo of Alberto. It's about repair. Wherever possible. As Silas drove along the sea-to-sky highway back into the city, a message lit up his phone screen. It was from Mara. Mom's at Aunt Melanie's. She wants to see me. Should I go? Silas pulled off into a quiet overlook and texted back. That's your decision. Just remember who she chose when it counted. Another notification buzzed in. Eli. Theo's turned himself in. Is this finally enough for you? Silas didn't answer. 1 year later, Silas stood on the observation deck of his firm's newest high-rise, a gleaming glass tower rising above the Vancouver skyline. Below, the city sprawled outward like a living blueprint. Roads, bridges, and buildings, the quiet resilience of human intention. The elevator doors opened. Eli stepped out, more mature now. Focused. Confident. You wanted to meet? He asked as he approached. Silas nodded. Come see the view. They stood side by side, the city stretched beneath them. Sentencing's tomorrow, Eli said. Theo's facing 5 to 7 years. Silas didn't blink. Justice. For Alberto. For everyone affected. Eli turned toward him. And Mom? Silas's voice dropped. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. Or pretending the past didn't matter. She's moving, Eli said quietly. California. Says all that's left here are shadows. Silas was still. Mara decides her own visitation now, Eli added. She might visit over the holidays. But she's focused on school. She got into MIT, Silas said. A rare softness touched his expression. She told me she wants to design architecture that endures. Buildings that speak for generations. Permanent statements, Eli echoed. And you? Silas asked. Cornell's grad program is solid. Eli hesitated. Actually, I accepted Stanford's offer. Silas turned. Stanford. That's where your mother's going. Yes, Eli admitted. But I'm not choosing her. Silas held his son's gaze. I'm not choosing sides, Eli said. I'm choosing my future. That's what you never understood, Dad, Eli said. Fixing something broken doesn't always require destroying the people who broke it. Silas turned back to the floor-to-ceiling window, the city shimmering below. When you build something yourself, your family, your legacy, you learn the weight of betrayal, he said. Some breaks can't be mended. I understand loyalty, Eli replied. And consequences. But I don't understand punishment without end. Your mother betrayed us. Theo betrayed us. And now, they've lost everything. When does it stop? Silas was quiet for a long time. Then, did I ever tell you about my father? Eli looked up, caught off guard. Only that he left when you were a kid. He left when my mother got sick. Cancer. I was 12, Silas said. I took care of her until the end. Alone. His tone was steady, almost clinical. He showed up again years later, after my first tower was finished. Wanted reconciliation. Forgiveness. A second chance. What did you do? Eli asked, his voice low. I told him what I later told your mother: some choices are permanent. Some betrayals close doors forever. Silas turned, meeting his son's eyes. He died 3 years after that. Alone. I didn't go to the funeral. Eli absorbed the silence. So that's the legacy? Mom fades out of our lives, you remain unmoved, and Mara and I, what? Pick sides? Not sides, Silas corrected. Principles. Loyalty. Boundaries. Truth. And what about redemption? The idea that people can grow? Silas's expression shifted, only slightly, but enough. That's what you believe. It's what you taught us, Eli said. Until this happened. Silas placed a hand gently on his son's shoulder. Go to Stanford. Keep your relationship with your mother, if that's right for you. But protect yourself. Don't rewrite history. Eli studied his father. Is that forgiveness? No, Silas said. It's acceptance. It's recognizing that her relationship with you isn't the same as her betrayal of me. As they prepared to leave the tower, Eli paused near the door. The settlement for the Hernandez family. That wasn't Theo, was it? Silas gave the faintest nod. It was the least I could do. Why? Eli had asked earlier that week. Why give the Hernandez family anything? That wasn't part of your revenge. Because justice isn't just punishment, Silas had said, echoing the words he'd spoken to Elena. Sometimes, it's restoration. Later that night, Silas was alone in his apartment when his phone rang. An unfamiliar number flashed across the screen. Silas Chen, he answered. Mr. Chen, a woman said, professional, but gentle. This is Dr. Camille Reyes from St. Paul's Hospital. I'm calling about your daughter, Mara. Silas's chest tightened. What happened? She was involved in a single-vehicle accident. The car veered off Highway 99 near Squamish. She's in surgery now. I'm on my way, Silas said, already grabbing his coat. He drove faster than he should have. The same hospital where a year ago his world began to unravel now held the only person who could still shake him. When he arrived at the surgical wing, he stopped short. Lena was already there, standing up from a chair. Her face was pale, tear-streaked. She was driving back from MIT orientation, Lena said shakily. They think she swerved to avoid an animal. Hit the guardrail hard. Silas didn't move, but his jaw tensed. Prognosis? Internal bleeding. Possible spinal trauma. They're doing everything they can. They called me, she added, voice cracking. Because I was in her recent calls. They sat, him on one side, Lena on the other. The silence between them was heavy, haunted by everything they hadn't said in over a year. Hours passed. Eli arrived, shouldering the tension like a diplomat between opposing sides. Close to midnight, the surgeon entered, scrubs stained and eyes tired. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, she began. Mara's out of surgery. Internal bleeding's under control, but there's damage to the spinal cord. We won't know the full impact until she regains consciousness. How long? Silas asked. It could be hours. Or days. But she's strong. After the doctor left, Lena walked toward him slowly. She's going to need both of us, she said softly. Whatever's happened. Mara needs her parents. Together. Silas looked at her, really looked, for the first time in a long time. The woman he once built a life with. The woman who broke it. For Mara, he said at last. Yes. Nothing more, Silas had said. And Lena understood. The truce was fragile. Temporary. held together by their daughter and nothing else. 3 days later, Mara opened her eyes to sunlight slipping through a narrow hospital window. Her father sat silently in the corner, a hardcover book unopened in his lap. Her mother was asleep in the chair beside her bed, arms folded, posture tense even in rest. "Well, this is weird," Mara rasped, her throat dry. Silas stood immediately and stepped to her side. "How do you feel?" "Like I hit a wall doing 90. She managed a faint smile. "Are you two in the same room voluntarily?" "For you," Lena said softly, waking and reaching for her daughter's hand. "Always for you." The prognosis was cautiously optimistic. Mara would recover, but physical therapy would be essential. The spinal injury meant setbacks, but not endings. Over the following weeks, Silas and Lena built a quiet system. Alternating hospital visits. Texting updates through Eli. Meeting only for medical briefings, never lingering long enough to reopen old wounds. On the day of Mara's discharge, Silas arrived to find Lena helping her pack. "California feels further away now," Lena was saying gently. "With all that's happened." "I'm not changing my plans, Mom," Mara replied. "MIT deferred my admission 1 semester. I'm still going." Lena nodded, though something in her eyes flickered. "Of course. I just thought maybe you'd want to recover closer to home." "She'll recover just fine in Boston," Silas said from the doorway. "I've arranged an apartment close to campus. And 2 of the top neuro-PTs in the city." Mara smiled. "See? The Silas Chin playbook in full effect." As Lena moved to leave, giving Silas space to take their daughter home, she paused beside him. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For putting her first." Silas looked at her. "I always did." 3 months later, Silas was at his desk when Jordan walked in with the morning briefing. Theo's appeal was denied. Full sentence stands. Silas didn't look up. "And the Milan Commission?" "Already ahead of schedule. They're calling your structural designs revolutionary." "Good." Jordan hesitated. "Lena's officially moved. Took a faculty position at Stanford. Art history." Silas finally looked up. "Near Eli?" "Yes." Also, Jordan placed an envelope on the desk. "It's from her. Not legal. Personal." After Jordan left, Silas opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. "Silas. I know words can't undo what I've done. But I had to try. I'm not asking for forgiveness," the letter began. "I know you well enough to understand that's not possible. What I'm asking is simpler. Let our children love both their parents without guilt. Without feeling like they're betraying one to be close to the other. Eli carries it every day. Mara hides it, but I see it too. I'm building a life far from yours, as you wanted. I won't interfere. I won't ask for more than I already have. You were always a man who valued truth. So here's mine, what I did was unforgivable. But please, don't let my betrayal cost our children any more than it already has. Lena." Silas folded the letter slowly and placed it in the drawer beside his architectural sketches. No reply. No reaction. Just quiet. That evening, he called Mara at her apartment in Boston. "How's PT?" he asked, once she'd caught him up on classes. "Brutal," she admitted. "But worth it. The specialist you found is amazing." He nodded. "And your mother? Does she check in?" Mara hesitated. "Yeah. Pretty regularly. Once or twice a week." "Good," Silas said. There was a pause. "Are you actually asking about Mom?" "I'm asking about your relationship with her," he clarified. "It matters. You shouldn't lose that." A long silence followed. "Who are you?" Mara said slowly, "and what have you done with Silas Chen?" He almost smiled. "Your accident shifted a few perspectives. But not forgiveness." "No," Silas said. "Some things remain. After ending the call, he stepped out onto the balcony of his penthouse. Below, the city glowed, Vancouver's skyline stitched together by steel and light, by decisions he had made, and those he hadn't. The betrayal hadn't disappeared. It never would. It remained part of the foundation, a scar that couldn't be erased, but could be built around. Silas Chin didn't forgive. Not Theo. Not Lena. Not anyone. But for Eli. For Mara. He could live with acceptance. With distance, and strength. He pulled out his phone and texted Eli. Coming to Stanford next month for the symposium. Dinner? The reply came quickly. Just us? Or? Silas stared at the screen. Then typed. Your choice. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something. Like the buildings he shaped, calculated, modern, enduring, his life would not return to what it was. But it could be reconstructed. Not the same. Perhaps better. Strong enough now to withstand whatever storms still lay ahead. If you've made it to the end of my story, thank you. Not just for following every sharp turn, every quiet moment, but for staying, for sitting with the discomfort, the silence, and the weight of betrayal that never quite leaves you. Now, I want to hear from you. Tell me, did I do the right thing? Would you have chosen differently? Did I protect my children, or let my pain write too much of the narrative? Was acceptance enough, or was it just cowardice with cleaner lines? Leave a comment, not just for me, but for anyone who's ever faced a fracture in their foundation. Tell me what loyalty means to you. Tell me where you draw the line between justice and vengeance. Tell me how you rebuild. Because maybe that's what we're all doing. Rebuilding. And if there's one thing I've learned, something I'd offer you if you're carrying hurt like I did, it's this: you don't need to forgive someone to move forward. You don't have to pretend it didn't matter. But you choose what stays standing. You decide what gets rebuilt. Hold tight to your truth. Protect it like it's the blueprint of your life. But don't let it become a prison. Because sometimes, the people who shattered your trust still share something you value: your history, your children, your story. So support those trying to hold their world together when it's easier to burn it down. And if you're still carrying betrayal, ask yourself, what will you build around it? Because this isn't just my story. It's ours now. And I'm listening, Silas.